Boys, it is that season in Master Duel. The Duelist Pass is ending in 13 days. A lot of people think the ban list slash the new box cards will be coming soon, and I wanted to share my opinion on what I think will be in the ban list. This is actually going to be a kind of two portion video. I'll cut them up down below. The first part will be my ban list predictions, what I think from a meta standpoint is going to happen to the game. So we're taking into consideration basically power rankings, the tournaments, best of threes. That's kind of where I'm looking at it. And the second portion is going to be the I guess you can call them spicy takes, if you will. There goes Master Duel. So okay. Anyway, they're going to be the spicy takes, if you will. I will talk about a couple of things that I think should be banned, should be unbanned, should be whatever. I'm going to talk about a few of my controversial, maybe, opinions on some ban list things. Some of them you'll agree with, some of them you will not agree with. And that is okay, because you can always leave a comment down below with what you agreed with and what you didn't disagree with. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe the video. That is what helps us get into the algorithm. Definitely the subscriptions, that's for sure. And then before we get started, I'm going to keep it a $1.50 with you, be totally honest. We did pick up a new sponsor, eWin Racing, who provides gaming chairs and gaming desks. They actually provided me with my new desk that I got here. Very, very nice of them to do so. We have an affiliate link down in the bottom. If you use code DLE, you get 20% off. That's pretty huge. 20% is a big chunk of money. So if you're thinking of making either of those things, check them out down in the description. Let's get into the actual ban list itself. All right, boys, we're in here. Now, the cards that you see on your screen are not, they're just here for visual representation. I'm going to be talking and clicking on them as kind of we go through the list of cards that I have on here. So these aren't the individual cards necessarily. I may be talking about an archetype or something along those lines. So let's get the meta shit out of the way right off the bat. The number one deck that needs to be adjusted in Master Duel is Drytron. That's just how it goes. In competitive play, they are still very, very good. They topped the power rankings depending on how you interpreted the power ranking data, whether you interpreted all of Tri-Brigade together, or if you separated all of Tri-Brigade, where we separated all the Tri-Brigade decks. Regardless, even if you combined all the Tri-Brigades, Drytron still would have been in second. If you didn't, they'd be in first. They're very, very strong in competitive play, and they are very, very strong when it comes to solo play as well in the ladder. Drytron is one of those decks that's just kind of very polarizing, right? You either go turn one, set up your board, it's disgusting, no one can get past it, or are going second and you probably lose unless you opened up your heralds and are able to negate whatever comes your way. And your opponent doesn't really have much, your opponent, they can try to play go second cards and try to hand trap you early, but then if you use Herald on them, it's GG from that point. So there's a lot of issues that come with the territory of Drytron. The number one thing, a lot of people are like, ban Herald, ban Herald, ban Herald, and I don't think Herald of Perfection is the problem. We actually saw in GG Tour's last tournament where there was a Herald, but there was no fuel in the hand, and the deck it was just a 2800 beater in defense mode. I think the biggest problem with Drytron right now is Ava. Ava was recently banned in the TCG, I believe, and I think banning it here in Master Duel would be the right call. Drytron's easily able to get 2 Ava activations after their first turn, which adds essentially 4 cards to their hand. That is a lot of extra material for the negates, and that is kind of the problem. The problem is them fueling the negates over and over and over and over. I think if we were moved to a position where Ava could not fuel the hand, and you actually had to pick and choose what to negate, especially after blowing all your cards, you're going to have 2 to 3 cards left in your hand depending on what you summoned. either you're going to be sacrificing monsters that end up on the board. You might not be able to go into like your unicorn play, just your ultimates play, or you would have to actually choose what you're negating and actually let your opponent have a chance at playing Yu-Gi-Oh. So that's why Ava is kind of in my sights as being number one to ban. There's a lot of people that also say Cyber Angel Ben 10 needs to be banned, and my objective when like kind of balancing the game in my mind shouldn't be to outright kill a deck. It should just make a deck weak enough that other decks can be played and there's more variety in the metagame. So in my opinion, I don't think Cyber Angel Ben 10 necessarily needs to be hit if we outright ban Ava. To be honest, even if it was just limited one, because it's searchable and recyclable, I don't even think it's that critical if it's gone. It can be one if Drytron continues to be too strong, but I think after you ban Ava, I think the deck will be in a much better place, and I would much rather ban Ava first, see how the deck operates, and then go back and hit Ben 10 further if the deck is still, considered overpowered. But for me personally, definitely get rid of the Ava. I think that is 100% the right call to make. Next up, we have Tri-Brigades. Now, Tri-Brigades, listen, are arguably the best deck in the game, especially when you combine all of their variants together. Even if you just combined Tri-Brigade Pure and Tri-Brigade with the Zodiacs, which is essentially just, instead of playing more hand traps, you play a couple of extra monsters in the main monster zone or main monster deck, and then in the extra deck you play the Zeus package, right? The Zoo and the Zoo package and Zeus package. Those are the big differences with the deck. Tri-Brigade's an interesting situation because Tri-Brigade in TCG, what they decided to do is ban this card, Dryden, straight up, right? And what happened is everyone started playing Bird Up, and Bird Up was considered just like the next evolutionary step of Tri-Brigade. Interestingly enough, in Master Duel, Bird Up is really bad. In terms of breaking down the Tri-Brigade variants and what they do, when you actually mathematically look at tournaments and how many enter versus how many top versus how many make it to top 8, Tri-Brigade, Lyceric, I don't know how to say them. I just call them Bird Up. They are always the worst performing Tri-Brigade variant. So much so that on our power scale, they don't have enough points by the end of the month to be considered even a rogue deck. That is abysmal. So interestingly enough, if they decided to go the route of banning Dryden in Master Duel, the next best variant would actually be pure Tri-Brigade, which is what you would want realistically out of the deck. You want them to keep to themselves and play pure Tri-Brigade and stop mixing it with all the shit in the game, right? Here's the catch though. I'm assuming we're gonna get new cards by the time the ban list rolls around, which means Tri-Brigade is just going to mix with something else, right? Whether it be the adventure package or whatever package, the DPE package or anything like that. And that doesn't really solve the case either. You know what I mean? So yes, while banning something like Dryden would fix the meta right now in our current metagame, ironically enough, it didn't work in TCG, but it would work in Master Duel because Bird Up just isn't good versus Max C. That's just how it is. It would ironically work here, but I don't think that is a good kind of long-term plan, especially if we get new cards right out the bat, and then Tri-Brigade is just the best deck again, right? I think instead what kind of has to happen is Revolt needs to be limited, probably limit 1, which in and itself doesn't do anything because they can search their 1 of Revolt, right? And then I think on top of that, they also need to get basically any other card limited. Fractal, Tenki, even something like the Ominous Omen. If this went to 1, it is hilarious in tournament play when this guy pops up and they're not even using him for his banish effect. They're just using him to link off to summon another monster just to get the search effect of his to continue their plays. It is always hilarious when that happens with this card. And that should probably not be happening with a deck that already goes like +6 after resolving a revolt, right? So I think if they really want to touch the power of this deck, and according to a lot of Yu-Gi tubers, because I did a little bit of research before this deck is still meta. It's like still tier 2, tier 3, even in the current TCG metagame. So, and that's the one that has Tinky, to 1 Trident band and all that stuff. So the deck is still relevant even with the nerfs that they received in TCG. So these are the nerfs that I recommend with our metagame. Hitting that revolt and then hitting literally anything else would cause the deck to kind of just become pure Tri-Brigade. Again, alternatively, they could hit that Trident to outright ban Trident. I would prefer they don't do that, but they could if they wanted to. We have seen them do it before. Next up, we have some generic cards. Max C. Let's talk about Max C. Max C is warping the entire metagame. The entire metagame is based on this card. If your deck does not do well against Max C, you are putting in cards to try and counter it, or you're not playing that deck, just outright not playing that deck. That's how we see decks like Emancipator, which should be a good deck, absolutely fail in Master Duel because of Max C. That's really what it comes down to. Now, Max C is an interesting situation. When I first came into Master Duel, I was not a fan of Max C. But the more decks I started playing, I started to realize there are decks out there that would combo into crazy negate boards like Infernoble way more consistently if Max C wasn't around. And that ultimately kind of differentiates the meta of TCG and OCG whenever you're looking at decks, right? Because I fully believe if Max C was not a card in our game right now, decks like Emancipator would actually be tier 1 rather than, the rogue tier 3 that they're at right now, right? And that's why decks like Tri-Brigade, which don't necessarily need to make a million moves per turn, they don't have to get a really good board, end up being, just the best deck of the format. Now, I don't want Max C banned, but I do think it might be a good idea to try and semi-limit it, because here's the caveat of Max C being good and bad for the metagame. At its worst, Max C is awful when someone goes first, sets up a crazy combo turn 1 deck or turn 1 play, and your hand was like, okay, you might have stopped a play at most, right? They set up most of their board or all of their board, you go, and they Max C you. That is when Max C feels unfair, when your opponent already has that crazy advantage, and then on top of that, you get Max C'd. What are you supposed to do, right? Like, oh, just Ash Blossom it, but if my opponent has a negation for my Ash Blossom, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? So that's why I would like to see at least a semi-limit, which would be limit to 2 for Max C. I don't think it should be left at 3, but I also think it's fine to be in the game itself, right? Just, I don't want it to be drawn as consistently, pretty much. I want to see it in less of my games, but I still want it to be a part of the game, to try and be a deterrent to, Emancipator, Infernoble, whatever crazy combo DDD, crazy combo deck that can set up, if Max C just didn't exist. I do think that it is both good and bad for the game of Master Duel. So there you go. I hope I got my point across clearly with that. Next things I want to talk about, just floodgates, man. Imperial Order, Skill Drain. I don't think these cards should exist. I mean, look at Imperial Order, man. For the simple cost of 700 life points, you auto win against decks that rely on spells. Right? That's just ridiculous. You know what I mean? I just think these traps, even like Skill Drain being at 3, and I know it was recently unlimited in TCG, I just don't think that these types of traps should exist in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I understand why these types of traps existed in previous iterations of Yu-Gi-Oh! I completely understand, when the games were more back and forth, but a lot of times, most of the gameplay of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is done in turn 1, turn 2, right? Between your hand traps and your opponent. It's very, very fast and everything goes very quickly. So when someone flips up a skill drain or an Imperial Order on you, it doesn't feel good. And ladder, it forces you to have to play back row removal in almost every deck, which makes every deck worse. So if you go up against a deck that doesn't have back row, you just have bricks all over your deck. And then in competitive play, at best it'll just slow a game down greatly, and then let crazy decks like Eldritch or Prank Kids that are already kind of slow be even slower. If that makes sense. I just think in general these non-searchable kind of almost auto win floodgates that require side decking to beat, I just think they shouldn't be part of Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. I don't think modern Yu-Gi-Oh requires this anymore, especially when modern Yu-Gi-Oh off of one card can make boards that have numerous negate values, so you can oppress your opponent without having to oppress them with crazy floodgated traps like this. And there's plenty in the game. I don't need to go over all of them, but these two are kind of the biggest offenders in my mind. Vanity's Emptiness is another one that I don't understand why that's a part of the metagame. Just all of those, I would prefer they're just all gone. Not Limit 1, not like, Limit 1's even worse, because it's like, what are the chances that you actually draw it, and then they drew it, and then you lose? So I'm tired of losing to that. I think everyone can agree that has no part of the metagame. Get that shit out of here. Goodbye. I almost forgot to talk about True King of Calamities. How did I forget this guy? VFD, people keep telling me, or rather the deck that summons VFD, Virtual World, have a bunch of plays, apparently. But you never get to see them because they just turbo out True King of Calamities, because why wouldn't you? This deck this card is too easy to summon, especially in decks like Virtual World, and they have too much protection against it, right? If Virtual World has this card, you have to play Forbidden Droplet, and your Forbidden Droplet has to drop a trap card, because otherwise they just chain and pop their True King of Calamities, and then the lingering effect is still relevant, and you can't use any effects, you can't attack, you can't do anything. It just says you can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! You just skip your turn, essentially. And I think, again, just with the whole idea of floodgates just not being fun, this is basically an on-demand floodgate that you don't have to hard draw. You're just guaranteed to have this card if you just didn't brick at all with your Virtual Worlds. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So get it out. I don't think we need it. Virtual Worlds would be fine even without it. They'd be able to still play the game. They just wouldn't be able to turbo out VFD. And I think that would just overall make a healthier metagame. He's also banned in both TCG and OCG, so this is probably like the coldest take. Like, he's gonna get banned in Master Duel. It's just a matter of when, right? He's not gonna be banned in every format and then just free in Master Duel. He's definitely going away, I think. Meta takes. Let's get into the spicy takes, because these are the ones that are a little bit more on the controversial side, if you will. And why don't we start off with something a little bit more on the tame side, where I think a few people can agree with me. Sky Strikers. Holy crap, Sky Strikers has so many cards on the limit list. Like, what is going on? The Kagare is limited, Engage is limited, the Hornets are limited, the Widowmaker is limited. Look, I understand Sky Striker was once a very, very competent deck, a very, very good deck, a tier 1 deck, if you will. Control right now is like, I guess Drytron would be the closest. I don't even know. You just kind of go turn 1 and win, right? Sky Striker being able to be... There's a huge lack of go second decks right now, right? Dinos, Cyber Dragon, these are all rogue decks that want to go second. It would be nice to actually have a deck like Sky Strikers that wants to go second be in the metagame, I think. I think that would be overall be healthy. I'm not a fan of Sky Strikers, but I don't think they need this many limits. And I don't necessarily mean unlimit everything, but at the very least, maybe this card. This card seems so good for what the deck does, and it's hard limited 1. It's an extra deck card. If you had more copies of just this, I think the deck could actually be a part of the metagame, and I think the community wants it to be a part of the metagame because a lot of people play it and then don't top with it, but they keep playing it anyway. It could be the waifu effect, but I think people do actually enjoy the play style and having like a bit of a harder control deck to pilot, if you will. I just don't think this deck should be limited anymore. I don't know. Like we're already kind of power creeping it in a sense, and we're gonna continue power creeping it with new cards. So I could just bring back a few cards. I think it'll be okay. Next up, boys, let's talk about Emancipator and Block Dragon. Emancipator is not a good deck in Master Duel, and I say this. I know, like, a lot of people are. I can hear the comments already. Emancipator is so strong. When they fill their full board, it's crazy. I can't beat them. Listen, a lot of rogue decks, if they build their full board, become very, very difficult to beat, near impossible, even, right? The thing is, though, I am of the philosophy of don't ban something until it's actually a problem, right? Like, yes, Block Dragon is very strong. Yes, all these things are very strong in Emancipator. Give them a chance to actually be good, though, before you ban them. The deck is borderline tier 3, borderline rogue. Like, it's every day it's on that line, man. It's not a good strategy because of, basically because of Max C. This format just doesn't fit it very well, right? So if you go out, and yes, I understand Block Dragon is banned in real life, and yes, it's very powerful. It's got a very powerful effect, and it really enables Emancipator. But man, I don't think the deck is I don't see Block Dragon get abused enough to warrant an outright ban. Maybe a limit, but an outright ban is shenanigans, I think, for me. I think the worst part of Emancipator, the unfair part of Emancipator, because here's the thing, if we limit all these other decks, Emancipator will go up. They're not like a tier 2 deck, so I don't think they'll go immediately to tier 1, but they will be played more often, right? And they'll actually be able to win more often. And I think the only real unfair thing that I don't like about them kind of running around and playing is the Buster Lock, right? And that's because of Union Carrier. And I think that is more of a pressing issue right now. Union Carrier being a legal card breaks a lot of decks, right? It breaks Drytrons. That's a way that's an extender for Drytrons. It can break Emancipator. It can break Thunder Dragons. Anyone that can make, you know, a dark dragon monster, or I guess any dark monster, can Buster Lock you, and that's not fun, right? Being able just straight up locked out of your extra deck because you have on-demand extra deck monsters. I would say if you wanted to keep Emancipator and Block Dragon in check, you would hit Union Carrier first, and then later down the road, when Block Dragon becomes a problem, then you can hit it. I just don't see a reason to hit it right now. I really don't. The deck is not good. It's just flat out not good. I rarely run into Block Dragons in ranked outside of Emancipator. And if I'm running a meta deck, Emancipator usually just gets kind of rolled over. So it is what it is, right? Until it's good, then we can ban it. Don't ban it yet. So there you go. Next up, kind of in the same vein, Rongo Bongo. Oh my goodness. This guy gets so much hate, and I think he gets hate because he's banned in real life. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I never see this card. I never see Phantom Knights, who's the best deck as far as I know, making this card. And when I do see Phantom Knights, they don't even make this guy because it's usually better not to make him. Right? Yes, I understand he has crazy effects and he locks you out, but it's the same argument as Block Dragon. I just don't think the decks that make him are good enough to the point where they need to be nerfed, right? You can make the argument of floodgates are not fun and we need to remove them, and that's fine. I just don't think it's a priority for this ban list necessarily. I think if they just completely decide not to hit Rongo Bongo and wait another ban list or two and eventually get rid of it, because I do think eventually they should probably just kind of sneak them on in there, get them out of here completely, because floodgates aren't fun, right? Like, that's just at the end of the day, floodgates are not fun. We don't want floodgates in the game. This would kind of be one of those cards that would get hit eventually. I just think he's kind of one of the less impactful ones because he isn't actually doing anything right now. He's just kind of sitting in the corner while all his other floodgating friends are doing shit. Do I think it should be banned eventually? Sure. Does it need to be banned in this ban list? No. No, not really. I don't really care if they hit him or not. It's irrelevant right now. He's just completely an irrelevant card. So there you go. And then the last spicy take, the one that just no one's gonna agree with me. I already know no one's gonna agree with me on this one, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyway, with a massive asterisk next to it. Massive if. Unban Dragoon, dude. That's right. That's right. Hear me out. Hear me out. Before you start typing, hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out, okay? I am not okay with Dragoon coming back in our current metagame. I think our current metagame is a lot more fun without him in the game. However, I am making this ban list prediction slash ban list wish list with the assumption that we're going to get new cards. And the new cards that we potentially could get with the Destiny Enforcer, the Adventurer tokens, I don't know how far they're going to give us or what they're going to give us. But when those cards come out, those engines are arguably better than the Dragoon engine slash package or whatever you want to call them, right? And at that point, I would just want Dragoon to be in the game so rogue decks have a chance to be relevant. If you watched my streams from a year ago before Master Duel came out and we were practicing for Master Duel, I played a lot of Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon was a lot of fun, but Cyber Dragon is a go second OTK deck unless Dragoon is free, and then they become a turn one, a bunch of negate boards, and then turn two, you would OTK your opponent, right? Dragoon enables a lot of off-meta decks. The only downside is literally every deck starts playing him when he's around. I think this problem isn't as bad when there are other powerful engines that people are going to prefer playing anyway, unless those engines just come out and immediately be banned right away in Master Duel, which would be wild. And if that was the situation, then I agree, keep Dragoon banned at that point. But if those engines are going to come out and they are at full power, I would also want this card to be off the ban list so we can play it alongside those engines if we choose to, or if our deck prefers to play something like this. Basically what I'm saying is if we get new cards, I think this card would be more in line with the power level, the acceptable power level of Master Duel. And I know TCG still has him unbanned. It's just OCG that has him banned. So I don't think it'd be too crazy if he was unbanned in our metagame as well. Especially with crazy cards, because here's the thing. Imagine getting max seed on your first turn, right? If you're like a rogue deck, you probably have to play 10 more cards before you get any halfway decent board that can stop you from getting OTK'd. But if you just have 2 effect monsters and you're able to go into Dragoon and just give your opponent a couple of draws, it gives you options, basically, is what I'm trying to get at, especially when you're a rogue deck. Obviously, stronger decks can also play him, and they would become a problem, but if those decks are going to play Destiny Phoenix Enforcer anyway, who gives a shit, right? Like, who cares at that point? So, that's kind of my defense for Dragoon. I just want to play my Cyber Dragons bad. That's really what it comes down to. That's going to be it from me, though, boys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, comment down below if you agree, or if you disagree, that's fine, too. That's absolutely fine. No hate if you disagree with me. Everyone has their own opinions on what things should happen. I think the meta discussion I had in the beginning of the video is probably the most relevant, while the second part is definitely more for the entertainment value. And maybe to rustle some jimmies, if you were. And then, maybe we can get a back and forth discussion going. As always, like, comment, subscribe down below. Did you know most people that watch our videos aren't even subscribed? What the hell is that? Yo, get your ass in and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until the next video, peace out, boys.